obviously we're seeing things that we haven't seen before in the sense of, fentanyl is now all of a sudden being labeled as Skittles, and it's coming out in colored pills where, drug dealers are specifically looking at targeting kids, specifically within schools. 1326 was a bill, and I think you just touched on a piece of what that bill did that we had in the legislature this past legislative session. And so I guess I'm wondering, just if you could go a little bit deeper and maybe hear from both of you on this. How do we move past? How do we fix the problem that we have here in Colorado? We know that 18 to 45-year-olds, it's the #1 killer, is fentanyl. 2/3 of overdoses across the country are a result of fentanyl. I think if you look at some of the statistics that are coming out of border protection as well as DEA, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20.4 million pills were confiscated just last year, and somewhere upwards of 30,000 pounds of fentanyl were confiscated last year. So it doesn't look like there's any end in sight. If you could elaborate a little bit more, how do we get past this problem? How do we fix that here in Colorado?
So that's a very good question, and it's a very big problem that we have. I heard a DEA agent say that the flood of fentanyl has already happened in our country. Well, there's something we can do about it. The first thing we can do about it is be aggressive about making sure that the I-25 corridor is shut down and that we stop and search vehicles. I don't care how much time it takes to make sure that we can stop the smuggling of fentanyl. When I was talking to an ICE agent, he told me that they don't smuggle people anymore because people can come and go as they will. They're now smuggling drugs across I-25 and I-70. So that's number one. Step up enforcement, step up searches to stop it, because if they know it's coming this way, they'll stop it. Number two, we got to educate our kids. We got to educate our kids about the dangers of fentanyl. There's not enough education going on. And then number three, the one thing we have to do, we have to get people in treatment. We have to hold the guys who are trafficking responsible for it, and we have to take care of the people who are addicted to get them off of it. If we do those three things, we can stem the tide. This is not a problem we can't solve. This is a problem we can solve. But you have to have resolve to solve tough problems. And that's why I'm on this campaign with Heidi Ganal, because she has the resolve to do the tough things, right? She has the resolve to stand up and say enough is enough. Because I ask myself all the time, how many kids must die? How many Americans must die? When you think about it, that 100,000 Americans die every year from fentanyl overdose. 100,000, that's twice as many people have died in Vietnam. And I remember the times reading in the history books about the protests that happened in Vietnam. So I asked the governor, how many more people must die? Is it 1,000? Is it 2,000? Is it 3,000? Does it have to be someone close to you? How many more people must die before we decide to make this an issue? Before we decide to make this a real issue? Because right now there are no task force. There are no law enforcement groups searching around it. They know what the problem is, and we're not solving the problem because our governor won't allow us to do that. And it's time for a change. And this is why I believe Heidi Ganal is the right person to be our governor, because under her, we'll stop this fentanyl crisis. We'll start the work to make sure it gets better, and we'll educate our kids. Because make no mistake about it, they are coming for our kids. They are coming for our kids. And what will we do to protect our kids? Anything.